Outliers, that's something that's quite important to deal with in the data. So what are outliers? Outliers are isolated instances in your data that don't look right. And they cannot look right for a couple of different reasons. So the simple reason is an outlier could have extreme values for one or more attributes in your data. So that's an example of a simple outlier. You have some data points, and both the x and the y of this data point is very, very different from the rest of the data points. So this kind of an outlier you can detect quite easily by creating confidence intervals around your data. So, and then once you identify that this is an outlier, you either remove it or you adjust the values. So you basically put a threshold. You say that x cannot be smaller than 10 and y cannot be smaller than 8. So you project that point to that corner 10, 8 in the data. So it won't be an outlier anymore. The reason you need to do that is if you don't do that, a single point like that can massively affect your learning algorithm. So for example, in this case, if you keep the point, it actually looks like there is a linear relationship between an x and a y. So that line would be a pretty decent fit. Once you remove that point, the x and the y are completely independent of each other, so there's no linear relationship. So the output of your learning algorithm could be dramatically different just because of one data point. A different kind of an outlier, and this kind is a lot more devious, is when the attribute values are in range. Right? So this point is clearly an outlier, but the problem is if you look at x by itself, it's not too low. It's kind of in line with the rest of them. Right? And if you look at the y value, it's very much in line with the rest of them, but it's still an outlier. So detecting these kind of outliers is a lot harder. I mean, one way would be to measure distances, but that's a very expensive proposition. So again, you want to once you've identified it, you want to either remove it or fix it in some way. A big lesson here is you should always try to visualize your data, because human eyes can pick up a lot of the information that you cannot encode in a filter. So you immediately see that as an outlier. Writing a filter to detect that as an outlier is next to impossible. So whenever you can visualize the data, you should.